If you are listening to this episode, there is a good chance that you are here because you want to make more money. And you probably want to make it in a certain way. You're not interested in hustle and grind. You don't want to sacrifice your soul, your license, your ethical guidelines, your values. You do want to make more money, but you don't want to do it at any cost. And so a lot of the advice that is available to therapists and private practice owners falls flat. But there's also a good chance that you are coming right up against something I'm going to maybe introduce to you, maybe explore with you, that is probably one of the biggest parts of why you're not getting the money that you would really like to have. I'm going to say something that might sting a little bit, and then I'm going to guide you to hopefully come to my conclusion, but also leave you with a solution. And today we're going to talk about why I think the real reason that you're not making more money is that you care more about your clients than you do yourself. I want to make sure that you know I'm not saying this as if it's a bad thing or that you should stop caring about your clients, but I'm just suggesting that we start to look for a win-win-win as opposed to only looking for the thing that best serves them. Welcome back to Peace and Profit for Therapists. My name is Calvalyn. I am very excited to have you here for this very interesting conversation. As a career design strategist for therapists who are starting, growing, and scaling their private practices, I very much am passionate about all the things that go into having a successful business. I have some theories, and I think that over time, these theories will be proven, but they are still theories at this point. And hopefully they'll give you a little bit of comfort because you might see a few things here that kind of make what you're experiencing make sense. And ultimately, I hope that my suggestions will help you to find the solution that's right for you. What we're talking about today is something that I actually think is an industry-wide problem that's been going on for decades, right? Maybe all of eternity. But is starting to come to a head right now. The solution I'm going to suggest is actually twofold, but I think there's a good chance that you're going to recognize it as something that you've kind of been thinking around, but maybe haven't been able to land on just yet. I'm going to use myself as a bit of an example here because, as I told you in previous episodes and on my social media, if you follow me there, my plan this year is to hit $1 million in revenue in not one, but two businesses. And I'm planning on doing that without having to work more than 30 hours-ish per week, which means that I'm challenging myself to do something that I've never done before at a scale that I've never reached before. And it is requiring me to kind of question some things that I considered were the standard or the expectation and get curious about what's actually possible for me. Anytime I'm making a move like this, I'm always thinking about how can I support that personal growth side of things, giving myself, like feeding my eyes, my ears, my body, my mind with all the things that will help me achieve the goal. And so I've actually dusted off a couple of audiobooks that I've listened to previously that I think are going to help me as a part of this process. And I'm also going through a self-paced challenge of sorts. Book number one is The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. Maybe have referenced it on the podcast once or twice before. This concept of the upper limit is the thing that I think you might be hitting because I think the industry is hitting it as well. And then I'm listening to Blink by Malcolm Gladwell because he is, in fact, my favorite author. And this book about how you make decisions and which ones deserve your time and attention and which ones you shouldn't overthink, I think is important right now. But I'm also listening to an abundance challenge. And if you think that that's a little woo-woo and all over the place, trust me when I say I think you're correct. But when you are looking to do something that hasn't been done before, it's probably going to require something that you've never considered before, or at least never fully committed to before. And that means that you're probably going to have to be someone that you've never been before. And for me, I think these books are going to help me get there. Now, I started this episode with a very bold claim that you care more about your clients than you do yourself. And that may feel harsh, but here's why I wanted to use that language to catch your attention. Most of the time when I'm having conversations with therapists and practice owners, a couple of things come up when we start to talk about making more money. If I talk about raising your rates, I generally hear that the won't pay that or the people that you serve don't have that. When I talk about changing your hours or structure of your business so that you um, can have the quality of life and the balance that you want, I generally hear how you need to be available for your clients when they're available, or how parents won't do this, or teenagers need that. And I hear a lot of conversations about what other people want and need, not giving much attention to what you actually want and need. When we're talking about the conversation around what insurance companies and the tech platforms are doing in terms of consolidation, they very clearly know what they want and need, and they are doing everything in their power to get it. And so, if they are paying attention to their needs and you and the client are paying attention to their needs, who exactly is paying attention to yours? Probably no one. And the reason is the industry has been designed this way. It was designed for you to care more about your clients, putting their needs first. Because the mental health industry as a whole has kind of had this upper limit problem where private practice owners and community mental health centers cared so much about their client that they did whatever the insurance company says, that now we're so dependent on the insurance companies. We want to, raise rates or expand so that we can actually keep up with demand, and we're hitting a ceiling. Not only are insurance companies not giving us raises and to our rates and reviewing them to make them more commensurate with the actual cost of living, they're actually scaling back, cutting rates. In fact, in some instances, slashing them, taking back money that they've already paid and making it almost impossible for people to exist. So the years and years of everyone in the industry saying, I can't make more than this, or this is good enough, or there's no way anybody can afford that, has put us into this position where we're incredibly vulnerable. When 2020 happened, and everybody started paying out tons of money to just keep people alive and exist, the insurance companies had a reason to do a reset, to push back, to say, no, we're not comfortable enough with $200 million in profit. We want more than that. So they started raising the limit. And what we end up having now is a situation where it feels like the insurance companies, the client, and the clinician are all actually in conflict, when technically we should all be actually working for the same thing. So the goal, we know, of mental health treatment is to stabilize mental health conditions. That's the goal of it, right? Particularly when we're thinking about something like medical necessity with insurance companies. The idea is someone has a diagnosis that is creating a hardship in their life. They're supposed to get access to treatment until they get to a place where they can manage on their own. So, in theory, every therapist should be working themselves out of a job. Here's where that becomes a problem. Now, obviously, we know that there are some diagnoses that are going to require lifelong or extended treatment, but that's not every case. And that's probably not even the majority of cases. In the majority of cases, the expectation is that eventually that weekly or even biweekly or maybe even monthly session should not be something that you have as a part of your life. That's for sure what the insurance company wants, because they don't want to pay for it. But in some instances, it's also what the client wants, because they want to get back to living life. But that means that the clinician is always in a position that they have to be looking for new clients, hoping to get more people in the door like a conveyor belt. And it was a really interesting thing. I've seen a couple posts, and I I did not answer them because there was enough people that had responded asking questions about this. There was somebody who said, "Hey, is there ever an ethical way, maybe even months or years after a client closes, to become friends with them?" And I think, no, friend, there's absolutely no way for that at all. there was also a post about someone who was saying that they had a client who was particularly distraught as they were approaching maybe a few months away from their maternity leave. And she was worried about the fact that the client was too dependent upon her, and that she wouldn't necessarily be stable during those, multiple months that she was going to be off, tending to a new baby. And so the reality is, in a perfect world, for the majority of our clients, they should be able to close at some point, but that's actually not good for business. So we're now in this conflict where we can only treat clients ethically as long as they need us. And the insurance company will only pay for them as long as we can prove that medical necessity. But we gotta have a constant stream of clients. So you feel like there's clients going out and coming in, and so it builds in what feels like a ceiling that you can't break through. And part of the problem is most of your revenue is tied to one-to-one sessions. In a traditional business model outside of, say, healthcare or even mental health, there are there's a customer journey in which there might be multiple places for you to get paid by working with a client. So, for example, if I'm a hairdresser, which I used to be, my client is going to come in and get their haircut. Every so often, they're going to get a color or a relaxer or perm or what have you. And then they need to go home to wash their hair in between time, and then periodically they're going to come back for a touch up or a refreshing. And so it's built in that there's a cadence that keeps them circulating in my finances. But for most practices, once a client has completed their one-to-one sessions, that's it. There isn't anything else for them to do. There is no other way for you to be paid. And so that relationship ends in sometimes a very, I'm going to say, harsh way, not meaning that you didn't appropriately, discontinue treatment, but just meaning that if somebody's been a part of your life for multiple years, even if that cadence has slowed down, you still kind of want to be in the ecosystem with them, right? And so that feeling of termination can feel like a loss, right? Which for some of your clients might actually activate their mental health concerns. But what if it wasn't like that? What if there was a more holistic approach to treatment that didn't just rely on one-to-one sessions that are, quite frankly, the most expensive ones that insurance companies don't want to pay for? What if there were other ways that your clients could also get their needs met that also financially benefited you? Which brings me to my expectation, my theory that the real solution to this upper limit problem, this financial cap on earnings problem, this war that we've gotten into with the insurance companies and the platforms, this concern that we have about possibly burning out by doing these one-on-one sessions constantly just to try and make ends meet. My theory is that the solution is actually a win-win-win, and it works for everyone. And that is for therapists to design their careers in a way that includes a diversified revenue model. Now, this is one of those things that you were not taught in grad school. And you might be a little bit resistant to this because why should you have to learn how to do something else? Why should you have to do more or learn more or go further? Why can't you just do what you love to do, get paid well for it, and not have to come up with another solution? And this is where I start to think about what actually benefits the clients and you. So when it comes to your client who is connected to you, there's a good chance that they maybe see you for 53 minutes once a week, maybe once every other week, maybe once a month. And then they go back to the rest of their lives for the other 167 whatever hours of the week, right? So they get a little bit of you and they get a whole lot of everybody else. Depending on how you choose to diversify your revenue, you might give them more access to your world, or you might naturally embed more holistically well-being focused activities and concepts and experiences into their world. So this is what it could look like, right? Let's say that your client comes to you once every 2 weeks for their one-on-one session, but they work at an employer that has once a month wellness events that they can participate in that was sponsored by you or led by somebody in your organization. And then at their church that they attend on a weekly basis, there's a little mental health note that is included um, on the program, right? And maybe they're able to participate in a support group that's specifically geared once a month towards people who are maintaining their high quality of life around a particular diagnosis. And in the midst of that, they connect with someone in their community who has a similar lived experience to them. And now they've got a naturally embedded support system in their day to day life. That sounds pretty great, right? Well, it only really happens if they have access to additional resources beyond your one-to-one session. And the truth is, if you can create those, you can also be paid in those variety of ways. Your clients get more support instead of being just more dependent on weekly sessions. You, as a clinician, get more income that isn't handcuffed to your direct service hours. And the insurance companies still get to be profitable. Am I onto something or what? Here's the other piece that I think other people kind of miss. Life happens in these seasons. And so sometimes you're in a season where working 20, 30, 35 hours feels just fine. But then maybe you have kids or you have a medical condition or something. Should your income just go away? Should you just give up your ability to survive financially just because you can't manage, a 30-hour work week anymore? No, I don't think so. A career that's designed around your knowledge, your skill, your passion, your talent, your ability, that includes the different things that you know how to do, that you enjoy doing, that gives you the option to work one-on-one or in a group or to teach a class or to write a curriculum or to be on a podcast. All of these different ways of generating revenue can actually make for a more enjoyable career for you. I have been very good at transitioning through careers and making money in a lot of different ways. But what I love most about the way that I've been able to move through different options within my own life is that sometimes it scratches an itch I didn't even know that I had. When I went back to undergrad to finish out my bachelor's degree, I realized that I really love reading and critical thinking and having like academic discussions. When I started my business, I started a blog and realized like, oh, I really love writing. And next thing you know, I've got a book deal. Years later, I ended up doing some work with an organization and somebody said they wanted a podcast. And I'm like, okay, I guess I'll do that. And here I am. And I really love public speaking, right? All things that had you asked me 10, 15, 20 or more years ago, I never would have considered doing. But because I started to look at what I liked to talk about, how people might need to hear it or receive that information, and how I could be paid well for it, I looked for that connection, and that connection is what led me here. Now, one of the things that comes up from time to time is that when I start to talk about diversifying revenue or designing a career, is that people say one of a couple of things to me. They're either going to say, I do not have time for that. I am already exhausted and I am so busy. I can't. Or they say, I'd love to, but I don't know how. So I've created something that I'm going to tell you about in just a minute that actually will answer both of those questions. But here's what I want you to hear me say. If you're already spending 10, 20, 30, 40 hours a week in between sessions trying to find solutions to keep the money rolling in or to stretch your revenue a little bit farther, there's a good chance that some of that time invested in diversifying your revenue can actually produce a really good result. But before we get there, I want to make sure that you're thinking along the right lines. So I've got a couple of questions for you, and I want you to really sit with these and kind of think them through. Don't let that first answer that pops into your head be the only answer, because for something like this that's asking you to have a little bit of a paradigm shift, you might need to circle back around to it a little bit. What is something with your clients that automatically comes up time and time again? What I mean by this is there a problem or a thought process or a belief that you find yourself having to address with a multitude of clients, almost like more than one, like a category of people need this specific area to be addressed? Oftentimes, our patterns and themes are an indicator of the potential for something that could be delivered in a different way. If you find yourself saying the same phrase over and over and over again, there's a good chance that might be something that could be the start of your diversified revenue plan. Here's another question for you. This one is a little bit tougher. Is there a part of your business right now where you're protecting your client's comfort zone more than you are your own? That one's hard because it might challenge you a little bit on something that you've never had to question before. It's not a bad thing to care about what your clients need, but if you are prioritizing that over your well being, is due for a little bit of a reflection. I see this a lot of times in terms of operations. So we let clients text us, even though we hate having text messages coming in at all day times of the day and night. Or we feel terrible about charging the cancellation or the no-show fee, so we never do it, which means that we end up having these chunks taken out of our weekly revenue because they don't pay. If that problem that area represents for you had a win-win solution, what would it look like? And lastly, based on the season you're in your life, and I mean your actual life, your family, your finances, your personal goals, your desires, the season you're in with your life, your physical health, your emotional health, your financial health, based upon the season you're on in your life, what would it look like for your day to day living, your day to day experiences, your working conditions? What would that look like if it was exactly what you wanted it to be? I had a conversation with someone recently who said, the question was, what would an average Tuesday at work look like for you? And she says, in a perfect world, I wouldn't work on Tuesdays. And I thought, what an interesting idea. And she said that in her world, the idea of working on Monday or Tuesday feels like misery. She would rather work like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and never have to work Monday or Tuesday. And, obviously she doesn't want to work Saturday or Sunday either, but that's besides the point. And I thought, I never really thought of that, right? But for her, she says, I want to be able to be around friends and family who only have the weekend off. But I loathe the idea of being busy all weekend and then jumping up and going back to work on Monday morning. So I'd like the Monday to be kind of my reset day around the house. And then maybe Tuesday to be, time to get your hair done, go get your massage or what have you. So she really kind of wants a 3-day work week, and she wants to have that extra time after a busy weekend to recoup. And I thought, makes perfect sense, right? But I had never honestly thought about it. So let me ask you, in a perfect world, what would an average Tuesday look like for you? And is there a way in which that makes perfect sense for you and your clients to get their needs met? This more money, less grind sprint that I'm having in the month of July is really meant to walk you through identifying what in your world is ready for you to rethink, right? What could be an offer that you make to an organization or an individual that takes you from being fully dependent on the one on one session to having something that's a little bit more diversified and in general, a little bit more stable. I built this sprint for therapists that have almost no time to spare. I really designed it to be something that will fit into the speed of your life, the same way I hope that this offer will. It is built for therapists just like you who do not have a ton of time, who don't want to reinvent the wheel. It's not just something you add to your plate, it's something that will help you rethink the plate entirely. If you've been worried about what happens if the insurance companies decide to stop paying altogether, or what to do for your clients who maybe don't have the discretionary income that you love, or maybe you just thought about having something to simplify your life so you're not having to always be on one to one, I think you're going to enjoy more money, less grind. Because the solution to making more money isn't about you hustling or grinding. It isn't about you cramming more sessions on your books and still ending up basically having a self-fulfilling prophecy of needing to do the same thing over and over again. It's about designing a career that recognizes and honors the expert that you are and allows you to monetize those gifts and those talents in a way that can grow with you without making you dependent on anyone or anything. I think our industry is ready for this. And I am honored to be a part of this solution. For a long time, I think we've been asking the wrong questions and by default coming up with the wrong answers. But the more money, less grind sprint invites us to ask a different one. What would it look like if I could make more money without having to hustle for it? And you'd already know how I feel about that. Because in my world, peace and profit are never in competition. We always get to have them both, which means it's time for us to have some offers that do the same.